It's bourbonblog.com live. It's Paul Hletko, founder, distiller at Few Spirits, with something incredible. This is brand new, and I'm so excited to be trying it with you, Paul. It's the new Few Spirits Immortal Rye, and it has a very special story that will be immortal. Let's hope it'll live on for many, many years.
I guess that's kind of probably the hope and the plan, or we'll wait and see. But it's certainly a whiskey that we're really excited about. We think it's really neat. We think it's a cool product, and end of the day, it's delicious, which is what really matters. But I do think it helps to provide a little bit of a new take on some stuff, and helps to bring in some flavors into whiskey that complement really well.
Well, we'll try it here officially in just a moment, but for all those of you just joining us that are Few Spirits fans and just fans of whiskey, take a moment to like this, retweet, share, do whatever you do to let your friends know how much fun you're having on a Tuesday night. Really, what a perfect way, Paul, to spend the first day of fall celebrating this whiskey, because there are some autumnal notes to this whiskey. That's something really special you have done that really reminds me of fall. It's great. It's great to have you, though, joining us. I know you were here a few months ago when we first started our Bourbon Blog Live series, and it's so glad to have you back. So again, Few Spirits, Evanston, Illinois. If you've never tried either of their products, they're all amazing, but this is the newest. What is this? Tell me about this rye. What's this rye all about?
So this rye, it's actually somewhat simple, but it starts off as our Few Spirits rye whiskey, straight rye whiskey, same stuff we put out there. Craft whiskey of the year, double gold here, double gold there. But usually when you put whiskey in a bottle, you add water to bring it down to bottling strength. For the Immortal Rye, what we do is we use tea instead of water, and in particular, we use a tea called the 8 Immortals tea, which is a Chinese tea out of the Guangdong province. We get it from a supplier in Denver, which is far less romantic to Americans than the Guangdong province in China, but that is where we get it from. And what the tea does is it gives the whiskey some really nice kind of tropical fruit flavors: peach, honey, dragon fruit, thus the dragon on the label, mango, papaya, and it helps to add a little bit of a backbone as well. So, the tea's got some backbone to it. You could say tannin, you could say astringent, but it's not really the most accurate, at least to my palate. But it gives it a little bit extra pop. And
right, and so
it really carries.
It's incredible. Yeah, it's that pop, those notes. So really, what you've done is you've taken rye whiskey, and in most cases, a whiskey, when it's not cask strength, is proofed down to a drinkable strength, whatever the distiller thinks it should be. But in this case, rather than using water, this is basically tea that you've used.
Yeah, and it's not just basically tea; it is tea. We cold extract the tea, so it's
right.
We make a cold brewed tea. It's not hot extracted; it's cold water, and what that does is help to really minimize some of that astringency that you might get from a hot brewed tea, and it helps to really focus in some of the fruit flavors as well. And it's kind of like the sister product to our bourbon that we put out just about a year ago. The cold cut bourbon, which is our bourbon.
Right there
you go.
It's amazing stuff.
But instead of tea on that one, we use a cold brew coffee. And on the cold cut bourbon, what you get is a lot more of the chocolatey, nutty notes. Think cold brew coffee. It's not the bitter. It's not the astringent. It's a little bit on the sweet side. There's still some bitterness, but it's not nearly as bitter as a brewed coffee would be. And here on the Immortal tea, or the Immortal whiskey, it's kind of the same. You get these really nice, subtle notes. I don't think the tea kind of gets up and slaps you. You can get that it's all whiskey. Again, it's 46.5%, 93 proof. This isn't watered down. We just use tea instead of water. There's no sugar added. There's no preservatives. There's no chemicals. There's no FDA number 5 or whatever else people might want to put in stuff that, there's no ingredients you wouldn't serve your mother if you presume like your mother. It's just good whiskey brought down to proof with tea.
Right. And the cold, and so I think it's really interesting that you mentioned it's been cold infused. So rather than being a hot tea, that's how, if we're doing herbal teas, usually we're doing a hot tea. But this cold, if you were to do that, there would be a lot more astringency. You're able to keep some of those flavors without it being just a bomb of astringency, right? I mean, that's why you picked that way of doing it.
Yeah, it's also the so this particular tea, so it's a black oolong tea, partially fermented, and it really wants hot water. It really does, but it doesn't want that hot water for very long.
Right.
And so what we found when we were playing around is that we just get much more. We get much more of the flavors we want with the cold extraction than we do with the hot. It's funny, we actually, when we were talking with the woman at the tea supplier that we buy from, she was kind of like, wait, what are you doing? Your cold water? I'm like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. She's like, oh, yeah, that really makes sense. I would not have thought of it that way, but that's, yeah, like, okay. Tea is like whiskey, right? I mean, it can be very sensitive to the inputs that you put into it.
Right.
But like if you hot brew tea for too long, it gets a little astringent. It might get a little strong.
Oh yeah.
By cold extracting, it gives us a little more control over those flavors because it's not time sensitive.
Right. I love the fact that that there are those tea notes. There's just like your cold cut few spirits bourbon whiskey with the cold brew coffee. It's a good balance. It's not, when I first heard about it, I was like, this sounds so good. But when I had it, I was like, wow, it is amazing. The balance of the bourbon, you can taste the few spirits bourbon in there, enough of the coffee, but not so much that it overtakes. Same story with the Immortal Rye. It's the beautiful notes of the rye, the tea, how they come together. And I get some really, and I was saying this when I was trying it yesterday for the first time, there's some just beautiful autumnal notes on this. I mean, there's notes to me of, and maybe it's just because it's fall and I'm thinking fall, but I'm getting some of that like pumpkin bread, between pumpkin and gingerbread. I get like a spicy rye, but some of those other floral notes. So it's like autumnal and floral both, and then just great flavors of the rye whiskey.
Yeah, I always think rye whiskey is a great fall whiskey because you've got that nice spice kind of settling in. You're getting ready to settle in. Up here in Chicago, we're getting ready to start settling in for that long winter.
Right.
And you want something that's got a little bit more, a little more pop, a little more, I don't want to say heft because that's the right word, but that spice just kind of really brings it into focus. Right. But with all the fruit notes that you get from the Immortal Rye, I see exactly where you're going. Like I don't get any pumpkin on this or anything, but I do get that crisp fall day out in the apple orchard. The leaves are crinkling under your feet. The air's got a nice little breeze, but there's some crispness. There's no snow or anything, but you're kind of you're wearing a flannel. Maybe you got a shirt jacket on.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot
very
going
evocative,
on.
I think.
Yeah, it has depth. I mean, that's what I like about what you do. Even with your rye whiskey, a bourbon, there's such balance. There's finesse in the whiskey. There's some nice nuances. I mean, there's the nuanced notes of what you do with your whiskeys is already present, and something that, as you sip it more, you see it more and more. But now that we've added the layers of the tea, it's just so interesting. So what inspired you? I mean, you were inspired to do the coffee because what you had been doing, you'd kind of been drinking the coffee and bourbon together, right? Is that kind of what inspired the coffee?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge coffee drinker, major caffeine addict, and trying to figure out ways to work with, trying to figure out stuff that we're working with, and we had the cold cut. Started getting an awful lot of awards. Won World's Best, World Whiskey Awards. best in class from the Whiskies of the World Awards. You know, people are starting to kind of sit up and go, wait a second, this is good. And you know, all along we're like, I know, I told you, it's really tasty. But you know, people aren't going to believe it until they try it for themselves, which is fine. You know,
Right.
don't take my word for it. You know, judge for yourself.
Exactly.
But we wanted to figure out a way. You know, what could we do with this idea of proofing with non-water? You know, what else can we do that's going to tell that story of innovation? We want it to be interesting, we want it to be neat, but we also really want it to be balanced, and we want it to not be a gimmick, because it sounds a little gimmicky when you're doing this, like, oh, okay, I don't know, but okay, guys. We want is a whiskey that the whiskey drinker can go, oh, okay, that sounds kind of cool, let me try it, and then they come back to it. And I think that there's an awful lot of whiskeys out there that, oh, I really wanted to try that, and people try it and they don't come back to it because, oh yeah, I already tried that. Let me try this one. Let me try that one. We want something that makes people want to try it again and come back to it and share it with friends. So I think that's kind of the goal. You know, we did a lot of experimentation and playing around.
Right.
You know, what does it mean to bring tea into whiskey, and how are you going to bring tea into whiskey, and what's the best way, and what's the best tea, and once you have that best tea, what's the best way to do it? How do you blend it the best? How do you get to this goal of a whiskey that's in the glass,
right,
that the drinker wants to drink and not just say they tried it?
Right.
You know, we've always been adherents of the theory that whiskey's for drinking, not for collecting.
Right.
We want our stuff enjoyed, and so you're not going to enjoy it. Yes, people enjoy it when they have a sip. They try, oh, I'll come back to that, and they never do. We want to add to the conversation of what whiskey is. You know, there's an awful lot of great whiskey on the market from some really great distilleries that really know what they're doing. It's tough to compete with that because they're making great whiskey. I mean, you and I both know down there in Kentucky, those boys and girls can make some damn fine whiskey. So how do you compete just by making something somebody wants to try once? You gotta want to come back to it, and you can't make somebody do it. They got to really want it, and I think we've hit that with this. It's new, it's different, and it's delicious.
I agree. Cheers. You've done it's something that is delicious that I will certainly come back to. A few questions coming in. Donald Snyder is saying that he can't wait to try it. Always great to have Don watching from Florida, and he is asking one of the first questions: have you considered a sweet tea rye whiskey liqueur, or doing anything with a sweeter tea, or did you try it before you did this?
Well, we've never really done sweet tea. Couple of reasons. I don't like it. So that's pretty much kind of it's not going to say it's the end of discussion, but it's kind of the end of discussion. Two, we don't want to put sugar in. I'm not a big fan of sugar. I don't have a sweet tooth. I know many people do, and that's okay. I'm not judging anybody, but I don't. And then three, and as Donald knows, this starts to get real inside baseball. Working with sugar can really mess with your densitometers.
Right.
And so we avoid that, not just because we don't want sugar, but also because it messes up our densitometers. You know, we are a small distillery. I don't have a giant lab like the big boys do. So we got to be very careful with what we put in our densitometers because they're very expensive.
Right. So you knew from the beginning, you thought, hey, I got to do a tea that's going to be along these flavor notes. I mean, did you try any other teas? Were there teas that almost made it when you practiced? Were there?
Oh yeah, no, we tried a whole bunch of different teas.
Right.
I don't remember the exact number. I think it was like somewhere between 10 and 15. Probably
Right.
closer to 15. But I mean, we tried black teas, we tried green teas, we tried purveyor, we tried Assam, we tried some more herbal teas.
Right.
Yeah, we tried a whole gamut of teas.
And this,
The green teas, I typically say I probably drink green tea half the time when I'm drinking tea, but it didn't work with the rye whiskey. I like Assam tea, didn't work. We tried the herbal teas, didn't work. We tried a bunch of chai tea. We really wanted chai tea, didn't work. The closest was a Lapsang Souchong that I really like. And for the most part, if I'm drinking tea, I'm probably drinking a Lapsang, probably north of half the time, and that's what I'm drinking personally.
right.
And it worked really well. That was a fantastic whiskey, and it was a close call. But we felt like the smoke really brought it. The smoke just kind of made it seem more typical. Typical is the wrong word, but it felt like a smoky scotch and didn't feel like it added to the discussion the same way that we think that these fruit notes do. I love smoke, and it was a close call. I would never say we will never put out a Lapsang whiskey because, A, never say never, and B, it's really tasty. We just felt like this was much more of the vision we had for what we wanted.
Right.
And, smoke can be divisive to the drinking public. The hardcore whiskey people tend to love it,
Yeah.
but not everybody does.
Right. No, this is you picked the perfect tea. This is again from a place called the Tea Spot in Denver, Colorado. This was a tea that you already were drinking and really just enjoyed then.
Yeah, we really like the tea. The Tea Spot has some great teas. Although it's funny now that this got released, the Tea Spot has been sold out of 8 Immortals tea, and so we're having. They went through their year planning on how much tea to bring over from China, and obviously these days bringing things in from China is not a small task.
Right. Right.
And so they weren't exactly expecting to be selling us this much tea. And then everybody, all the whiskey people, are like, wait, what kind of tea is it? What flavors am I getting? Wait, okay, I gotta try that tea. So
well, and I think about it as just another element. I mean, we think about, maybe we would try some branch water with bourbon, or let's try that source of water with the bourbon this is. But now you really have brought a whole new level with whiskey. You could do a tasting with a bottle of your rye, a bottle of your Immortal Rye, and then some tea to really dissect the notes. I mean, there's a whole experience that we haven't previously really been able to have as whiskey lovers with this, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting. I think it's neat. Actually, in Colorado, we're doing a promo where if you buy the bottle, there's a little sachet of the tea attached to it.
Oh, nice.
So you get, I think it might just be like 1 cup's worth. It might be 2 cups. I don't know. Don't get angry at me. But that's pretty cool. Hey, I'm a whiskey guy. I want to try this whiskey with the tea, and here's the tea right next to it with the brewing instructions, of course, so you can try it. And people are really liking that because it is kind of cool. And, a whiskey drinker can sometimes get, unfortunately, put off by, whiskey writers and whiskey blog. No offense, Tom, but people get put off by, the notes of this or that. And if you're a novice or starting off or maybe medium,
Right.
maybe you don't even know what those flavors are. Like, I tend to get that personally more with like the English. So like you get an English writer talking about flavors in whiskey, and I've never even heard of what they're comparing it to. Like, what? Wait, what is that?
Victoria sponge cake.
I believe you, but
yeah.
What's mincemeat again? Like what? I don't.
Yeah.
Who? And so I think it's really neat that you can go, okay, well, there's tea flavors in here. Okay, I get that. You told me there's tea flavors. Okay, here's the tea.
Right. Right.
Oh,
Then
now
you
I
can
can
look
see
for it.
that, and you can have this, and you can apply it. You can have our Few Spirits Rye whiskey right next to it, and you can go side by side, and they're different. I mean, they're fundamentally different
Oh
whiskeys,
yeah.
but you can see it, and then you can combine the tea in there, and you can't just add the core rye to the tea because this is 93 proof.
Right.
You have had it like, aha, I'm just going to trick you by buying that tea and not buying your whiskey. I'm like, okay, cool, let's do that, but it's not going to be the same.
It's not gonna be the same. And there's also something that you all do. I mean, I think that it's, one of those things that maybe whiskey drinkers in general really never think about is when you proof down the blend of whiskeys that you have, you're mingling barrels, unless it's a single barrel. You have this batch. How do you go about the process of proofing down when it comes to both water, and is it different when you proof down with tea? Is there a different process involved?
It's basically the same process, but it's also funny. Like we proof down real slow.
Right.
I think most competent distilleries do as well.
Right.
So it takes it really takes us a minimum of 3 to 4 weeks to
Wow.
proof down. You got to let the whiskey rest. You got to add the water in nice and slow so that it really blends in. And it's funny, like when we were starting getting this ready and starting to launch it, internally all the marketing guys like, oh, you got to do this. The sales guys like, everybody's all freaking out because everybody's excited. And marketing's like, oh, you got to send this out to the sales team. I'm like, we can't. It's not ready yet. What do you mean it's not ready? You got the whiskey, you got the tea, just mix them and do it. I'm like, no. It takes a month.
Right.
And like, well, no, you got to do it. You got to do it. It's like, all right, it's not going to be right. This isn't going to be the whiskey we want. No, you're fine. You're fine to send it out. And so he sent it out, and everybody's like, this isn't the whiskey we wanted. I'm like, oh, I know it's not. Here's what we got. So then a month later, we sent out the second round. It was like, oh, that's what you were talking about. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm like, yes, I know. So
it took a little bit longer than it usually would with the water just to get this right.
Yeah, I mean, even with water, we take it nice and slow. I mean, water and alcohol really don't mix. They don't want to. And if you proof down too fast, you can get saponification, and there's all sorts of bad stuff that can happen. I think most distilleries are pretty careful with that sort of stuff because if you get a batch of whiskey that gets saponified, you're done. You can't fix it. You're dumping that batch of whiskey because it tastes like soap,
Right.
And so not many people do that. Certainly there are people that go a little crazy and proof down for a very, very long time. And we try to do a reasonable balance where we can preserve quality without disaster.
Right.
But no, the process is basically the same. I mean, tea is really just water. We've had to do some work to try to optimize the filtration to get tea particles out. We don't want those tea particles continuing to extract and bring out all those tannins and astringency. So we have to filter the tea pretty good to make sure that it's not going to mess up the whiskey. But other than that, the process is basically the same. Get a tank of whiskey, add the tea slowly over time, let it mix, circulate it, mix it up, try to get everything to mix together. Wait a couple of days, add a little bit more tea, mix it up again, wait a couple more days, add in some more tea, all on the way, trying to get it down to the right bottling strength.
Well, what I love about this is you think about something, because there are spirits out there, or many years ago, I first remember seeing bourbons and vodkas flavored with, sweet tea or whatever it might be. And that's, that's for the right market. That's great. But I mean, what this really is, it's not a flavored whiskey. I mean, it's something that you all have done that's really allowed the the tea to speak and the whiskey to speak, and the two to really be complementary in a kind of a harmonious way that, to me, just really amplifies both. I mean, they're both being amplified, but they're both very delicate.
Yeah, I mean, it's the industry, and everybody is going to call this a flavored whiskey, and that it is what it is. But it really isn't a flavored whiskey. I mean, this is 93 proof. It's not 70 proof. There's no sugar added.
Right.
So I mean, people are going to call it a flavored whiskey, but it really isn't.
Right. That's right.
And I get it. And I'm not, I'm not trying to no, it's not wrong, but it's really not. It's really a whiskey. I mean, technically, legally, it's something called a DSS, but
it's called a
what to get a little inside baseball as well. But DSS, distilled spirit specialty.
Okay.
Because it's not really rye whiskey once you add the tea to it. Now something else.
Right.
But legally, and according to the federal government, to the TTB, this is a DSS, not a flavored whiskey.
Right.
So, I mean, everybody's going to call it a flavored whiskey. I get it. Just like cold cut. Everybody calls cold cut a flavored whiskey, even though it really isn't. But, I'm not going to fight. I'm not even going to fight on that hill, much less die on it. No,
sure. And I think it's for whiskey enthusiasts, I think that once they taste this, they'll know that it's those nuances. There's definitely the flavor, but it's something so much farther beyond. And really, again, you're the first ever to take a bourbon, proof it down with coffee, take a rye whiskey, proof it down with tea. This has really never been done before and bottled the way you're doing it.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anybody that's ever done it before. I mean, if they're out there, I don't know.
Right.
But I do think that's a key differentiation is it's 93 proof. Most of the flavored whiskeys out there, they're going to be softening them up, 70 proof, maybe even down as low as 60 proof, with all sorts of stuff added to it. And that's just not what this is. Not talking shit about anybody that's doing that, and that's great.
Right.
It's just simply not what this is. And so if you're turned off because you don't like, if you don't like all that sugar and you don't like that texture and you don't like all the chemicals, try this. Maybe you like it, maybe you won't. We don't make it for everybody. We just make it for a few, so it's okay.
This is for a few. We have, I think, a fan of a few spirits here, Steve Bulls, asking about the process for this and also the tea that's used in your breakfast gin. Are there any parallels? I know your breakfast gin's so interesting with those notes of tea. Are there any parallels that you have there?
Honestly, other than the fact they both use tea, not really. Okay. So, again, this is, whiskey comes out of the barrel, add tea to bring it to bottle proof. On the breakfast gin, yes, we use an Earl Grey tea in that one, but that goes actually into the still. We take our base spirit and then we macerate the botanicals in the spirit for a period of time and then redistill it with the botanicals in the pot. So here, we don't macerate the tea in the spirit. We make a tea and add that liquid tea to proof it down. The tea doesn't go in the still at all. The tea just comes in at the very, very end of maturation.
The very end.
There's just different processes.
Yeah, we love that breakfast gin. It is something so special in the breakfast in the gin world, and definitely check out the Few Spirits breakfast gin when you have a chance. Of course, people are asking. Thank you, Aaron Clark, asking if you can find it in Maryland. Where can this be found? How can people find a bottle of this?
It's still rolling out across the country. So Maryland, we're distributed by Breakthrough Beverage. I would be looking around Baltimore and the Baltimore suburbs. Perfect Pour has always been a strong account of ours. I think that's it's about halfway between Baltimore and DC. We've got some strong accounts in Annapolis. We've got some great accounts outside in the DC suburbs. Montgomery County, we're probably not going to be in quite yet. That's going to take a little bit of time. But we should be all over Maryland. And if your local and favorite doesn't have it, just tell them Breakthrough Beverage carries, and they can bring it in for you.
They can bring it in, and I'll put your
DC is also Breakthrough. So
okay, great. I'll put the website up there too. Few Spirits.
FewSpirits.com.
Go there and look for this. This is going to be, if you can find Few Spirits in your area, you're going to probably see a bottle of this. This is fairly limited production. Is this fairly limited? This each year it's going to be out, or is it going to be How limited is this?
No, well, we're currently having our second batch is rolling out.
Okay.
We shipped the first load into our warehouse to start selling. That sold pretty quickly. So their second batch is in the warehouse now and it's starting to go out. And we're bottling our third batch on Tuesday, I think.
Very nice.
Might be Monday. I forget what the bottling schedule says. So it's still rolling out. No, you're not going to find it everywhere yet because it takes time. We're a small company. We don't have like an army of people that can go out and make sure every liquor store and every corner has it on the day it's supposed to launch. So it just takes a little bit of time, but it is coming. And that's always the number one thing that helps us get more placements is customers asking for it. So feel free to ask. If you're not in Maryland, you've got questions, reach out to us on social media. You can email us at info@fewspirits.com, and we'll be happy to try to help you find a retailer. And if not, we'll tell you who the distributor is in your area. So you can tell your favorite retailer, and they'll bring it right in for you nice and easy.
So many Few Spirit fans out there. I always appreciate when I'm talking to somebody, whether they're from Illinois or whether I'm mentioning it being one of my favorite whiskeys. You know, I think you really have some great fans out there, and I know that they're going to be excited to try this. And he says he doesn't have an army out there, but we know that Paul now has a dragon. You have your own, the dragon makes it more powerful. Tell me about this dragon.
So the dragon was inspired by we get some decent dragon fruit notes from the whiskey itself,
right?
And B, all of our labels are inspired by things you would have seen at the 1893 World's Fair here in Chicago. And so this dragon is inspired by a dragon that was on display on this vase that was originally at the Japanese house at the World's Fair.
Wow,
and so,
that's so cool.
A couple years ago, I saw a newspaper story. I have no idea how I found this story about this vase that had popped up in some random Chinese restaurant in Berkeley, California.
Oh, wow.
And it was just a vase. And somebody somehow figured out that it had been like this centerpiece of a display at the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I mean, these things come in, they get displayed to 300,000 people a day walking by it, and then it disappears and it ends up in a Chinese restaurant in Berkeley. Like, that's a kind of a cool story that just kind of stuck in the back of my head. And then we had this whiskey, it's got dragon fruit notes. I'm like, what about that dragon that was on that vase?
Love it.
And so then we looked at it, we loved it, we put it on the label, and then my sales guy's like, oh, what's the restaurant? We got to go get this in. We got to get that placement. It's like, oh, it's a good point. I haven't even thought of that. And so we looked it up, and the restaurant's out of business now. And some English collector bought it, so now it's somewhere in London.
Wow, it's a badass dragon. I love it. It's really cool, and it's so fun the way you have carried through the theme of the 1893 World's Fair. That's what's on the front of all your bottles will be something that reflects that.
Yeah, so it's part of our brand. It's kind of our brand identity. And so it's cool that we can able to do it. And it's also true that dragons are cool, man.
Yes.
They look cool, and it's very visual. I think we're going to be changing the color on the kind of foil band here where it says Immortal Rye. We're going to change that foil color because it doesn't show up very well in certain angles.
Right.
It's like there you can't even see it. There you can. Right. Now you can't. Now you can.
It goes invisible.
I think we're going to just redesign that label.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna design it to make it give it a little more pop. So in a few months you'll be just going, oh, that was an early batch versus a late batch with different labels, but it looks cool, and it does matter.
Yeah. No, it does. I love the theme of it. I mean, I think the theme really draws you in. That dragon fruit. What else do you? I mean, my first notes were more autumnal. A little of that between gingerbread and pumpkin bread, but I get that floral note. What else do you get on this? Because there's so much going on. There's this softness with this delicate complexity. What else do you get, Paul?
You get to obviously I think on the nose you get this great, again, like you're saying, autumnal, fall, but I get peach, kind of like a
Yeah,
roasted peach, honey, but not like a honey you'd get like on a space Scotch. You don't get that same honey.
Right.
It's like an intensely herbal honey. But again, those kind of tropical fruits, and you still
Kind of
get some of
grilled
those
fruit,
same,
tropical. Yeah.
those same jammy fruit notes.
Yeah.
Graham cracker a little bit.
Yeah.
You got my son playing trumpet in the background, so welcome to
like
COVID 2020, everybody.
It's just some nice accompaniment there. Yeah, that kind of that nectar, that grilled fruit, floral, it's really beautiful. I mean, I think that's the part of it. It's one of those whiskeys. People always ask me, what are some of your favorite whiskeys? Why are they your favorite? To me, my favorite whiskeys and spirits are those that I have to go back to get new notes, and I can totally see that. It's one of those things you're going to get new notes every time you go back to this with the complexity of it.
You get new notes, like we were talking before about kind of that tannin and that astringency, and it's there, but it's not so bad. But I think it's a little bit of a different tannin than like the heavy oak tannins that you get from like a relatively long aged whiskey. If you're going at like a 15, 20-year-old bourbon, you're going to get a lot of these really big, heavy wood tannins.
Yes.
And this has some tannins, but it's not the same. It's not those wood tannins. It's much more the herbal tannin. Again, that tea tannin that's going to carry through.
Yeah.
Which is, again, it's a different look. And I think it helps to encourage you to keep on coming back and try it against this tea or that tea, or have it with this cocktail or that cocktail, and watch the different flavors kind of pop out from the left and from the right to the top and the bottom. It's, again, at the end of the day, it's the whiskey in your glass that matters. It's not the story, and it's not the tea. Do you like the whiskey in the glass?
Right.
And I think there's something here for everybody.
There really is. It's something that I want to come back to and always taste it. It's something that's so unique. I think you're thinking about putting a unique whiskey in a tasting lineup. You maybe have a bourbon over here, Scotch and Irish. As I guide tastings, this would be perfect for a tasting that would really be something unique to put in there to say, hey, here's another expression of whiskey that's very special, that helps us understand whiskey and what elements of tea can do. What you've done here is really remarkable. I mean, is this category of, using something like bourbon or tea, is this something that you think will, I can see this being something that will inspire others to do this, other distilleries. What do you think? I could see this, others doing this.
We've found over time that if you want to know what the spirits business is going to be doing in 2 years, watch what Few is doing today. So, yeah, people are going to be copying this. That's okay. We were here first. When we launched our breakfast gin, I didn't really know of too many teas or too many gins that had tea in them. And then also there's gunpowder tea gin, there's this tea gin, and everybody's doing that. And we launched this, we were doing that, and we launched our core rye at 70% rye, and we were the only ones. And then 4 years and 6 months later, Jack Daniel's launches their rye with 70% rye, 20% corn. I'm like, okay, guys. And it's I guess somebody was saying earlier today that the imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
Of course.
And sometimes I'd like to get flattered a little bit less. But that's okay. I was like, make your own stuff, guys. It's always, I look at some of the other craft distillers, and the ones that always make me go, are the guys like, oh shit, I wish I had thought of that before they did. I've got friends that made an ode to pickle spirit. I'm like, oh, that's genius. I wish I'd made that first, but now they made it, so I can't. I'm like, oh, you guys. Oh, that's clever. I like it. But it's friendly rivalry, but I do tend to think that people should try to make their own innovations rather than just copy mine. But that is not how American society works. So be it.
That's what happens, and you know that they're loving it, and they know it's something special when it's copied, and that does happen. I can almost see them. I mean, you've really challenged the rules of how to proof down a whiskey now twice. I can see it becoming a category that others may try. And it's so interesting. I think it's done so much for whiskey. And if you're watching now, I encourage you to try a few spirits, whiskeys if you haven't, but definitely try the cold cut coffee bourbon. Try this new few spirits Immortal Rye. It really, I mean, I'm a big rye lover, and this to me really speaks to me. I think it's genius and it's delicious. This goes for how much does this go for a bottle?
45. MSRP is 40 or 44.95 or 44.99, whatever people say. I mean, there'll be places where taxes are a little bit higher. You might see it as high as 50.
Right.
You might even see it as high as 55 some places. But MSRP is 45. I have already seen it as low as 40 at places that are cutting deep or trying. They brought in a little heavy. But I would cut and see it for 45. It's a little bit more, a little bit less. We think it's pretty fairly priced. We're small batch. We're really the handcrafted. Everybody says they are, but we actually really are. And give it a shot.
It definitely is. What's been happening there at your distillery? I think if someone was asking, I think close by in Illinois, is what's going on there? I know we talked several months ago, but what's been happening?
I think we're kind of in Illinois, and in particular in Evanston, where we are. We're kind of in that little bit of, it's kind of no man's land right now, where, especially here in Evanston, the virus is certainly present, and everybody's taking all the precautions and being careful, but it's not a raging problem. I don't want to say it's under control because it's not, but it's not a raging wildfire. It's not good, and I don't want to minimize anything, but it's not growing at 50% a week or anything like that. Right. It's been pretty steady in the pretty low category. Be one new case a day, maybe 2 cases a day. Again, considering how it is other places, pretty minor. Not to diminish anything again, but we've got it pretty steady, which is good. And hopefully the rest of the country can kind of catch up to kind of where we are. Because I think that'll be the next big step. If we can once we can get things a little bit closer under control, you can start loosening up a little bit more. And I don't know that normal life can come back yet, but we can start getting ever closer. And maybe we don't have to destroy the entire restaurant industry anymore. And maybe we don't have to destroy the live music industry anymore. And maybe we don't have to destroy all sorts of other businesses that are just currently getting eviscerated. So we're hoping it kind of keeps that way here, and the rest of the country starts to fall in line with us rather than us trying to follow the other way around.
Exactly.
But I know you guys down in Louisville are starting to have some stuff the last couple of days too.
Yeah. I mean, we're doing the best we can. I'm trying to follow what the rules are in every state possible. Are you guys distilleries? Are they are open for tourists to some capacity? Are you all open? Or what's the?
We're not doing tours. Obviously it's indoors and we're small, so it is necessarily a pretty close space. So we really can't do tours, but we are doing cocktails to go.
Nice.
For about on Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights for about 3 hours. We're doing bottle sales out the door. Depending on how many people are there, we're pouring cocktails. If you want a cocktail to sit out kind of like we're outside our door, you can sit outside and enjoy a cocktail.
Nice.
Like you're a real person in a civilized society, which is, I think sometimes these little things
they mean a lot.
So important. Just
do.
Sitting outside and having a drink with a friend, a year ago would not have seemed so magical, but today it is.
It truly is, and that's good that you guys are doing that. And definitely, as I said earlier, go to fewspirits.com. I know that you've always been a voice and a person that people really appreciate in the craft spirits and in this distilling business. Your thoughts for, I mean, I know we talked about it several months ago when you were on. What is right now looking like for craft spirits? It's very important that we support them, but what are your observations for craft spirits in general?
I think craft spirits in general are going to continue to thrive.
Right.
There are places that are going to continue to struggle. If you are, if you're a craft distiller that's primarily focused on your on-premise business at your distillery, it's going to be really tough. But craft spirits as a whole are going to continue to do well. There's certainly a lot of pain right now, and there are places that are not going to survive. I think that there's a lot of places that are going to they're going to hold on until O&D is over, and once the holidays, or once that final shipment leaves for Christmas, they're going to be looking at another 6, 8, 12 months before they get back into doing something volume. I think they're going to call it. But overall, I think craft spirits as a whole are going to do great. Buying patterns have been interrupted, but they are somewhat returning to normal, at least at the retail, certainly not the on-premise. But I think when quarantine first hit, everybody panicked and went out and bulk bought everything they could get their hands on,
Right.
and they were buying for bulk rather than quality.
Right.
And so people changed what they wanted. People changed what they bought because they were optimizing for I don't want to go dry versus what they want. And after 4, 6 weeks, people are like, oh, this is kind of the new normal now. And another 4, 6 weeks later, they drank through what they had panic bought. And now they're kind of back buying what they want to buy because they can. And it is an affordable luxury. It's a $45 bottle of whiskey, but it's not a brand new car. And it's not a lot of things. It's a $45 bottle of whiskey, and you can sit down and you have 15 drinks. It's $3 a drink.
That's right.
I think a lot of people go, that's a very affordable luxury. And maybe $45 isn't that much to spend on a bottle of whiskey that I'd like and want to try. And it's not a $200 bottle of whiskey. It's not a $100 bottle of whiskey. It's not even a $70 bottle of whiskey. It's 45 versus 30 or 35.
Right.
It's
And
not
it's something
a huge
special.
jump.
Yeah, it's a special flavor.
And it's different.
Yeah. It's something you haven't tried before. I mean, I review and taste a lot of whiskeys, and I get whiskeys that are amazing, and they may remind me of something else. And I'm like, well, I've had whatever it might be, a bourbon aged, and as you said, Kentucky or whatever. But this is something. These are notes, I promise you've never tried before, and that's just what I love of what you've done here for the whiskey market. So again, the one we've been tasting, I see a few people just joining us, new people. The Immortal Rye from Few Spirits. I'm going to put the website up once again. And thank you for watching and mentioning this, Scott. People have been spending on things they enjoy. Sales are up everywhere. We appreciate your support, Scott and Chris, and everybody who's watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you're watching. Please like, subscribe. If you have any other questions for Paul, do let us know. We will also be including this along with all of our other video casts on our podcast channel. So you not only get a chance to watch what we just did if you want to go back and watch it, but you can also subscribe to our podcast channel there. This is really well done, Paul. It's so good to see again, and I think that you've done an outstanding job with this whiskey. When I've featured your whiskeys at tastings before, people always come up and they say, this is great bourbon or great rye. This is something different. This is something something I haven't had before. Type of whiskey, the American, whatever it might be. Flavors that I've not had before. No matter what you're making, what is your goal? I mean, it probably changes whiskey by whiskey, but what do you hope that people that are few fans walk away and say whenever they try your whiskey and spirit?
I think we're always trying to make stuff that's a little bit different.
Right.
So I think that's kind of the key. We want, at the end of the day, it's the whiskey in the glass that matters. So it's always, everything we do is always guided by what's in here. It's not what's in here that matters. It's what's in here. Where's my camera?
That's right.
That's what's important. And we don't want to be a me too. I believe I can make a whiskey that tastes just like a Kentucky bourbon, but
Right.
why would I? There's
Right.
great Kentucky bourbon out there. So, how does that, how is that going to intrigue somebody? I've always had a throwaway line of, it tastes just like Four Roses, and it's only $20 more. It's a terrible line. And Four Roses is great whiskey. I shouldn't say terrible in association with Four Roses.
General,
It's awesome. And top of my opinion, Four Roses is actually my favorite Kentucky whiskey, but that's cool. Fine. We want something that's different. It's not fun to copy somebody else. It's why, we were talking about the Ode to Pickle earlier. Like, why am I not going to make that, even though I think it's fun? Because I don't think it's fun to copy my friends. We want somebody to kind of get it there. Okay, here, I'd like this. I can't get this anywhere else. There's no other choice but to get that again. You can get great Kentucky whiskey everywhere. You can't get great few whiskey other than with few. And so I think that's kind of that's always our goal, is different, quality first, different second. And if it hits all that, if you've got quality and you've got different, is it good? Is it fun? Is it something that we get excited about? And we're like, yes. Because at the end of the day, when you're making whiskey like this, I'm going to be talking about this whiskey probably for 45 to 60 minutes a day for several years.
Right.
If I'm not excited about it, fuck, why am I doing that?
Right.
If I wanted a real job, I could go get one. I don't want a real job. I want to make whiskey, and I want to talk about whiskey, and that's what I want. So why cheat myself out of what I really want to do?
Right. You've done, you continue to do a great job with innovation, and thank you for being you for the industry. I think the approach that you take to it is something that is to be admired, and thank you, Paul. You've done a really nice job with this whiskey.
Thanks, Tom. Like I said, we're real excited about it. Now I got to pour myself a little bit more. I'm getting even more excited as we talk. Here.
And again, it's thank you all, everybody joining us tonight. Bourbonblog.com live. We do this almost every night at 8 p.m. Eastern, and please bookmark that. Try a few spirits, try some other great craft spirits, and try this new Immortal Rye whiskey. And we'll see you again soon, I hope, Paul. Cheers, man.
See you, Tom. Thanks for having me on, brother.
Cheers. Yeah, it's great to see you, my friend, and thanks.